The valley was quiet that morning, too quiet for a war zone. Dust hung in the air like smoke from yesterday's fire, and in the small tin-roof kitchen near the SEAL outpost a woman named Elena Torres was frying eggs. To most soldiers she was just the cook. The woman who made their meals smiled politely and stayed out of the way. But no one knew what she carried inside, the memories, the pain, and the fire that never really died. Every day, Elena watched the convoys roll out. Tough men in body armor, joking, shouting, checking weapons. They looked at her with a half-smile, not unkind, but dismissive. One of them, a young sergeant, would always tease, "Careful, chef. Don't burn the bacon, it's our only hot thing out here." She would smile, every time, but deep down she hated how invisible she'd become. Elena hadn't always been a cook. She once trained as a marksman, one of the best in her batch. But an injury during training and a superior's bias pushed her out. Too slow, too soft, better in the kitchen, they said. And that's where she stayed. Yet every night after serving dinner, she'd go to the range behind the mess hall. When no one was watching, she'd pick up an old M110 rifle and practice. Her aim never missed, not once. But no one knew. No one cared. That morning something felt different. She looked up from the sizzling pan and saw a convoy of SEALs preparing to move through the valley. She waved as they passed. Commander Briggs, a seasoned soldier, nodded at her. He was one of the few who respected her silence. Within minutes, the trucks disappeared behind the hills. Then came the sound no soldier ever forgets. Explosions. The earth trembled. The windows rattled. And from the kitchen, Elena heard the unmistakable rhythm of gunfire. At first, she froze. Then training took over. She ran out past the mess tents toward the command post. The radio was crackling. "This is Alpha Team. We're pinned down. Multiple hostiles. Request air support. We can't see them. They're everywhere." Static. Then silence. Her heart sank. The valley, the same one they had just driven into and was now alive with smoke and fire. The base commander barked orders. "We've lost contact with the SEAL convoy. Keep your positions." "No one leaves the perimeter." Elena clenched her fists. She could hear the panic outside. Helicopters were grounded due to fog. Backup was hours away, and every second meant another soldier dying in that valley. She looked at the open armory door. Inside, rifles stacked against the wall. One of them, a Barrett M82, caught her eye. The same weapon she once dreamed of mastering. Her breath trembled. Her hands shook. But she stepped forward. "Torres, what are you doing?" It was Sergeant Miller, the same man who joked with her every morning. "I'm going out there," she said quietly. He laughed, thinking it was a joke. But her eyes and cold, steady eye told him otherwise. "You're a cook," he said. "You'll die before you even get close." She loaded a magazine. "Maybe. But they're already dying out there." And without another word, she walked out into the mist. The valley stretched miles ahead. Broken trucks, smoke columns, echoes of rifles. She moved low, careful, using terrain for cover. Every few steps a memory flashed. Her father teaching her how to hold a rifle. The sound of his voice saying, "Never shoot in anger. Shoot for reason." Tears blurred her sight, but she blinked them away. After 20 minutes of crawling through dirt and debris, she reached a ridge overlooking the valley floor. Below she saw them, the SEALs pinned behind burnt-out vehicles, trapped. Enemy fire poured down from the opposite cliffs. She spotted the leader, Commander Briggs, waving his men to stay low. They were surrounded. Elena scanned with her scope. 5 enemy snipers, 2 on the left ridge, 3 shifting positions near the rocks, and one of them, she noticed, was targeting Briggs. Her breathing slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. She whispered to herself, "Steady," just like the range. Then, crack. Her first shot sliced through the fog and silence. A second later, the enemy sniper dropped. The others panicked, looking around, searching for where it came from. She fired again, then again. Each shot precise, each hit clean. Within seconds, the SEALs below realized someone was covering them. Commander Briggs yelled through the radio, "Whoever you are, keep firing. We'll move on your mark." She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat was tight with emotion. All she did was reload and fire again. For the first time, she wasn't the cook. She was the protector. Minutes passed like hours. Bodies fell. The fog grew thicker. And when the valley finally went silent, the seals emerged, battered but alive. Elena stayed low, watching from her ridge, heart pounding. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. It was Commander Briggs. He looked at her, stunned, realizing who it was. "Torres, you?" She nodded silently. He stared at her rifle, then at the valley of fallen enemies. "You saved us. All of us." Elena looked down at her hands, trembling, covered in dust and tears. "I was just doing my job," she whispered. That day, the soldiers didn't call her the cook. They called her the woman who silenced the valley. And though she went back to the kitchen the next morning, nothing was ever the same again, because in that war, courage didn't wear a uniform. Sometimes it wore an apron and carried a rifle. The morning after the rescue, the base was silent. No one laughed. No one teased. Every soldier who looked at Elena now saw something different. Not the woman who cooked their meals, but the woman who walked through hell and came back alive. Still, she said nothing. She cleaned her rifle, washed her apron, and went back to the kitchen. But inside, something had changed. Her hands, once used to stir soup, had felt the weight of life and death. And once you've saved men with a rifle, it's impossible to go back to peeling potatoes. Commander Briggs visited her that evening. He stood quietly at the kitchen door, watching her slice vegetables with the same calm precision she had used to shoot enemies. "You could have been one of us," he said finally. Elena didn't look up. "Maybe once. Not anymore. We're going back to the valley tomorrow," he said. "We need someone who knows the terrain. You saved us there. Help us finish the job." She stopped cutting. The knife hovered mid-air. "You're asking a cook to fight again?" "No," Briggs said. "I'm asking you." There was a long pause. Then she nodded slowly. "At dawn. That night she couldn't sleep. The memories came back, the screams, the gunfire, the faces of the soldiers she couldn't save. But there was one sound that haunted her most, the voice of her father saying, 'Real courage is quiet.' It doesn't need medals," she whispered into the darkness, "then let me be quiet, but useful." At sunrise, the team moved out. Elena rode in the back of the lead Humvee, rifle across her lap. The soldiers glanced at her, unsure whether to salute or stare. Sergeant Miller, the same man who once mocked her, sat beside her silently. When the convoy reached the valley's edge, Briggs signaled to stop. "This is it," he said. "The rebels took over the old radar station up there. High ground, full visibility. If we lose that position, the entire region falls." Elena scanned the hills with her scope. She recognized every ridge, every rock. The enemy had dug in deep. She exhaled slowly. "They'll see you coming from a mile away," she said. "You need a ghost up there first." Briggs looked at her. He didn't have to ask. Elena grabbed her pack and started climbing. The sun burned down as she crawled through the dirt and thorns. Her clothes tore. Her knees bled. But she kept moving inch by inch until she reached a rocky ledge overlooking the radar station. She lay flat, breathing through the dust. 5 guards. 2 snipers. They looked relaxed, overconfident. She whispered into the radio, "Target positions marked. Wait for my signal." Then she began her silent war. One by one she picked them off. Each shot was a whisper of justice. Each fall was a memory avenged. When the last sniper dropped, she whispered, "Now." The SEALs charged. Gunfire erupted from below. Explosions lit the ridge like lightning. Elena covered their advance from above, her shots weaving through chaos like threads of precision. For 15 minutes, the valley roared. Then suddenly it went still. Smoke curled into the sky. Briggs' voice came through the radio, tired but proud. "Station secure." "Torres, you did it again." She didn't reply. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "I only did what I had to." When they returned to base, everyone stood in silence as Elena stepped down from the truck. No cheers, no applause, just respect. For the first time, even Miller saluted her. Briggs approached her with a small box. Inside was a medal, the Silver Star. "For extraordinary bravery," he said. She looked at it quietly. "I don't need it," she said softly. "Give it to the families of the men who didn't make it." Briggs nodded slowly. "You're a rare kind of soldier, Torres." She smiled faintly. "I'm not a soldier, just a cook who refused to watch others die." Weeks passed. Her story spread, whispered from base to base. They called her the Ghost of the Valley. Some said she was a sniper. Others swore she was a myth. But to the few who knew the truth, She was something greater, proof that courage isn't about rank or medals or power. It's about stepping forward when everyone else steps back. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Elena stood outside the kitchen again, apron tied, rifle hanging on the wall. The smell of food mixed with the fading scent of gunpowder. She looked toward the valley, her valley, now quiet again, and whispered, "Rest easy, boys." The cook's still watching. Months had passed since the battle in the valley. The base had changed. New faces, new laughter, new scars. But Elena Torres? She stayed the same, quiet, focused, watching from the shadows of her small kitchen. She never wore the medal she refused. Instead, it sat in a wooden box above her bunk, unopened, gathering dust. To her, honor wasn't medal. It was memory, and memories were heavy enough. One evening, while she was cutting onions, a jeep screeched into the base. Out jumped a group of soldiers, exhausted, bloodied, and terrified. Their leader stumbled into the command tent, shouting, "We lost contact with Eagle Team. Ambush near Ridge 12, survivors unknown." The room froze. Ridge 12. That was the same mountain range where Elena's first mission began. She dropped the knife. The sound of it hitting the metal table echoed through the kitchen like a warning. Moments later, Commander Briggs entered. His face said it all. Something terrible had happened. "Elena, they took our men. Same group you fought before. They're back." She looked up slowly, her eyes calm but cold. "Then the valley isn't silent anymore." Briggs sighed. "We're short on snipers. I need you again." Elena stared at the floor. She thought she was done fighting. She thought the valley had buried her ghosts. But some ghosts don't stay buried. "I'll go," she said. "But this time I'm not coming back to cook." That night she packed her rifle, the same one she had cleaned 100 times. Each scratch on it told a story. She whispered to the weapon, "Let's finish what we started." At dawn, the team moved out. This time they weren't heading into a battle. They were heading into a trap. The rebels had captured 3 SEALs alive. They were using them as bait, knowing the Americans would come for their own. Elena rode in silence. The engine's rumble felt like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. When they reached the edge of Ridge 12, Briggs gave the order. No mistakes. "We go silent, we go fast." Elena checked her scope. Something didn't feel right.
The ground was too quiet.
Even the wind held its breath. Then a flash. A sniper round hissed past her head. "Ambush!" Someone yelled. Chaos exploded. Bullets tore through the trees. Men fell. Smoke filled the air. And just like that, the valley was alive with death again. Elena rolled behind a boulder, scanning the ridgeline. There, 3 snipers, well hidden, high up. She marked their positions and whispered into the comm, "I see them." "Stay low," her rifle spoke again. 1 shot, 2, 3. Each bullet found its echo in the scream of an enemy falling. The SEALs pushed forward. Elena stayed behind, covering them, moving from rock to rock like a shadow. After an hour of fighting, the gunfire began to fade. But as the smoke cleared, Elena noticed something. A small cave entrance at the far side of the ridge. It wasn't on the map. She moved closer, crawling through dust and ash. Inside, she heard voices. American voices. She stepped in quietly and saw them. The 3 missing SEALs, tied and beaten but alive. Their eyes widened. "You're the cook," one whispered. Elena smiled faintly. "Not today." She cut their ropes and handed them water. "We move now. They'll be back." As they crawled out, one of the SEALs asked, "Why are you here alone?" "Because no one else was fast enough," she said. But as they exited the cave, the sound of engines roared again. "Enemy trucks! Reinforcements! Too many to fight head-on." Elena grabbed her radio. "Briggs, we've got company. Get the evac bird ready and I'll hold them off." "Negative, Torres. That's suicide." "Then call it what it is," she said. "But I'm not letting them take my men again." She took position on a cliff overlooking the valley. 3 magazines, 1 rifle, a storm of enemies below, and she began firing. It wasn't shooting anymore. It was art. Each shot deliberate. Each reload a heartbeat. Each kill a promise kept. The SEALs escaped toward the extraction point. Elena stayed. When her last bullet fired, she didn't move. She just smiled, tired, calm, free. Helicopters thundered overhead, their spotlight cutting through the smoke. Briggs looked down from the open door and saw her silhouette, still standing, rifle in hand. "Torres, get in!" he shouted, but she didn't respond. Her figure slowly faded behind the dust and flames. Hours later, the valley was quiet again. The seals were safe, but Elena Torres was gone. They searched for days. All they found was her rifle, resting against a rock, pointed toward the horizon as if still guarding them. Back at base, Briggs placed her name on the memorial wall. No rank, no title, just Elena Torres, the cook who fought back. And under her name he engraved her last words from the radio log. "The valley's not mine, but the silence is." Weeks passed, then months, but no one ever found her. Elena Torres, the cook who had saved entire teams, who had faced death without medals or orders, had simply vanished into the valley she once defended. At first, soldiers whispered about her. Then they started telling her story to new recruits, around campfires and barracks in dusty outposts far away. They said she was just a cook, but her shot silenced an entire valley. The story spread, and from one base to another, from soldiers to their families, until Elena Torres became something more than a name. She became a legend. Every war zone has its ghosts, but the ghost of the valley was different. She didn't haunt out of fear. She haunted out of honor. Some soldiers swore they saw her shadow during firefights, a lone figure on a ridge, rifle glinting in the sun before an enemy sniper suddenly went quiet. Others said they heard her voice on the radio, faintly, during missions in the same region. "Stay low. You're being watched." And then the line would go dead. Moments later, they'd be saved from an unseen threat. 1 year later, Commander Briggs visited the same valley for a new mission. It was quiet again, too quiet. As he walked through the dust and broken stone, he stopped near a familiar ridge. Something glimmered in the sunlight. He brushed away the sand, and there it was, her dog tags, rusty but still legible. He knelt, holding them in his trembling hands. "You really became the silence, didn't you?" he whispered. Behind him, the wind moved through the valley like a sigh, gentle, sad, proud. When Briggs returned to base, he gathered the entire unit. He placed her dog tags in a glass case beside the flag. No speech, no music, just a moment of silence. Then he turned to his men and said, "Courage doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears an apron." The men bowed their heads. Even the new recruits, who had never met her, felt the weight of her story. From that day, every new soldier who joined the unit heard about the cook, not as a myth, not as a ghost, but as a reminder that real heroes don't fight for medals. They fight because they can't stand watching others fall. Years later, far from the battlefield, an old woman opened a small cafe near a quiet border town. Her hands trembled as she cooked. She never spoke of her past, but on the wall behind the counter hung an old scratched rifle, and beside it a photo of young soldiers laughing around a campfire. A curious traveler once asked, "Ma'am, why the rifle?" "You a hunter?" She smiled softly. "Something like that." Then she turned back to her kitchen, stirring the soup just like she used to, quietly, peacefully, purposefully. Outside, the wind whistled through the mountains, and if you listened closely, you could almost hear a distant echo, the faint click of a rifle bolt and a voice whispering through time. The valley's silent now, because the cook's still watching,